For more on today's announcements by the Ford government, I'm joined by CB24's Sijia Liu. She's at York University. And Sijia, good news for the universities, maybe not good news for the students.
That's right, Liz. We're getting a lot of a mixed reaction to this. So today, the Ontario government said they're going to give Ontario colleges and universities $6.4 billion in funding, but they're also going to start increasing tuition again starting in the fall of this year. And they're making some big changes to OSAP. That is the program students use for funding when it comes to paying for their tuition. And the big change for that is that it will now be more loan heavy before it was grant heavy. And for more reaction to all the news today, I'm joined by Sayak Sneddon-Ghosal, president of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. Sayak, thank you so much for joining us this evening. There's lots to get to when it comes to this announcement, but the main concern I'm hearing from students, at least here at York University, are the changes to OSAP. Can you help put that into context of, how this will impact students and the loans they're paying?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I think we're really encouraged by the Ministry of Colleges, Universities, Research Excellence and Security's commitment of $6.4 billion to the sector over the next 4 years. But I think with that does come some disappointing shifts in OSAP, particularly moving from more of a grant-based model to more of a loans-based model. And that's something that we're nervous about, especially as students are navigating unaffordability challenges across the province.
And what are you hearing from some of the students across the province on how they're going to navigate this moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we run the Ontario Undergraduate Student Survey every few years. And what we found in 2022 was that around 79% of respondents said that they were somewhat or very concerned about having enough money to complete their education. And so I think that as we see the shift of the system to a little bit more of a loans-based model, I think that that's something that can be highly concerning for students and something that is going to, increase that unaffordability and increase the debt coming out of graduation from post-secondary.
And staying on the topic of affordability, the tuition freeze that's been in place for 7 years is also ending this fall. They're going to be increasing tuition by 2% for the next 3 years. What was your reaction to that announcement?
Yeah, so USA was very much in favor and in support of the tuition freeze. And we did realize that at some point in time, it likely would have to be lifted, even though it was a policy that we were in support of. And so I think with that, we were pleased to see that the way that they lifted it was capped at 2% a year. That is actually something in line with an USA recommendation. However, as part of that recommendation, we did also call for proportional increases in OSAP grants and loans to ensure affordability alongside that potential increase in tuition, just to make sure that students were actually supported throughout the process. And so I think, unfortunately, we didn't get there on the OSAP piece of it. But, while we were in favor of the tuition freeze and we would have been in favor of it extending, we recognized at some point it was going to get lifted, and we're happy that's being done in a responsible manner.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the other side now. $6.4 billion the province is giving to Ontario colleges and universities. And we all know that these post-secondary institutions have been struggling the past few years. They say they're going to create tens of thousands of new programs and spots for students. How do you see the climate and the environment changing for colleges and universities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the $6.4 billion investment is huge, and that's definitely a massive win for the post-secondary sector. And that's something that we are really pleased and excited to see, that there are going to be more funded seats for students at these institutions. At USA, what we primarily care about is the affordability, accessibility, and accountability of post-secondary education. And I think that this is something that is going to, increase the number of opportunities for students and is going to make sure that institutions can continue to provide a robust educational experience for students. And that's something that we're delighted to see.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your reaction to all of this and bringing this into context.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And just a bit more on the announcement to reiterate, the Ontario government is giving colleges and universities $6.4 billion over the next 4 years. They're also beginning to raise tuition again starting in the fall. But Liz, this all comes as there are some major changes to the OSAP program that could see some students pay more in loans. Back to you.
All right, Sijia, thanks for the update on that story.